Welcome back to Stranded Over 90, hot off the heels of what was a very tight, closely contested. I forgot what other words were in the source, but it was one hell of a finish at the first ever Stranded Sports Open as we were raising some money for Make-A-Wish. It was a great event. The man on the show with me here, Tyler Gallo, was not able to make it, unfortunately, but he has followed along and he will be helping me share the story of the event with all of you. But thanks once again for tuning in and listening to two mediocre golf players talk about their journey through golf. But Tyler, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Spent a week with my grandpa in Beaufort, South Carolina, and he is a former scratch golfer and a guy that is a huge golf fan. So you can already assume that I had to play a few rounds with this guy. But I was good. It was good to get away for a while and just relax. Played some cool places, so that'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll dive in with the tournament though, man. Stranded Sports Open. We ended up raising $1,700+ for the local chapter of Make-A-Wish. So tremendous success. The rain literally held off just long enough. I mean, it was like being in when they make the joke about this town you experience each season each day. In
Yes.
like the
Yeah.
course of one day, you can experience all four seasons. The sky was every shade of blue and gray and black while this outing was going on. If you were in one part of the course, it was blue skies. You were another part, it was overcast. Another part, it was dark. It was crazy. My butt was clenched for the last hour I was out on the course, just hoping it would hold off. We got a little rain. We started on 4, so we got done with 18, then had to loop back around and play 1, 2, and 3 since it was a shotgun start. And we were on
Right.
hole 2, and it started drizzling. And I said, "Oh man, like I hope," because I knew there's about 6 or 7 groups behind us still, or whatever. And I was like, "Oh man!" But then it stopped. We got to the clubhouse. I started collecting scorecards. We did a putting challenge on the practice green, which was electric. I'll talk about that a little bit later on too. And
Well, the
it just
question I have real quick, did you use an actual shotgun for the shotgun start?
no, there was a air raid siren on top of the clubhouse.
Oh, that's
It was
impressive.
insane. It was loud, which it needs to be. But yeah, it took me off guard. I've not heard one of those go off in a long time. One of those little horns on top of a
Yeah.
golf club. But if there's lightning, everyone needs to hear it to know they want you to come in. And I was standing right next to the clubhouse when they blared it to get everyone moving, and I was totally taken aback by it. Uh, got about 3 inches off the ground. I jumped so high in air quotes. But yeah, man, it was nuts. But the rain held off literally as the putting competition was going on, and then it didn't stop raining pretty much the rest of the afternoon. So if we started a half hour later, even we would have had almost everyone miss out on a few holes. Luckily, my dad was the last group on the course, and they left on the last hole. They were in last place anyway. So there was really no harm, no foul. That was like the perfect scenario where the least problematic group that was out there ended up being the only one who had their round cut short, and it was only
Yeah.
half a hole.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah,
It's good to
it
have.
was good. And again, I want to make it very clear that the event success was not relevant to how Jack and I played golf. But I am disappointed in how Jack and I played golf, and it was just a classic round of like the score does not reflect how
Yeah.
well I think I played. My uncle, who is 88, just quit golf. He just said, "I can't even golf 9 anymore. There's no point." So he gave me some new clubs, and I have really pretty decent Callaway irons he had given me before when I was in high
Right.
school. He gave me a Strata 5 hybrid and a
Ooh.
3 wood also, and I took both of those because they're newer than the 3 wood, and I didn't even have a hybrid. Um, and so I used both of those off the tee, and I was hitting them down the middle. I didn't even use my driver after like the first 2 holes where I needed a driver. So I was cooking with those. My irons were pretty well off. Jack was bombing them a lot further than I was, so we took a lot of Jack's iron shots. There's only maybe 2 or 3 cases where it was really a debate. And so that was great. The putting was pretty good, but once again, chipping just reared its ugly head in, and it was disastrous, man. We blew birdie chances, we blew par chances. We would have 50 feet. You just needed to chip it straight onto the green, already in the fairway, pinned straight ahead, and we'd either duff it or roll it right off. He kept trying to bump and run. The greens were way too hilly to bump and run, but it's what we had to do because I was having a severe case of the yips. I watched, I prepared, I tried in the backyard, and I really found a good chipping form. But then just every time I pulled back the club, I just imagined, what if I skull it? And so I would get under it, but I would kill all the momentum. So just it would chip. It would go in the air and look like a nice chip, but it was going not even half the distance it needed to go because I'd take feet off the club because I was afraid I was going to skull it. And then again, I got excited that it was going to be working because I had redone my chipping form, and I would pick my head up and end up sculling it. So it was like that for basically all but 3 holes where we actually chipped on and got our putts in. So we shot a 92 that placed us 15th out of 19 teams. Not happy about it. We shot a 43 on the front, and I was like, that's really good, but I've heard the back is awful. And so it was tough. It was a tough end, but great finish up front. A lot of good friends of ours placing near the top. Uh, Two of my groomsmen came in third, which was great. Another one of my groomsmen and his cousin tied for first, but lost on the tiebreaker by 1 stroke, which was best.
Oh man.
They lost with the eventual winners who were friends of friends. Two really good guys. They came in first, so it was nice to see them win. And I won't mention any team names, but I can guarantee you, despite the small group of 19 teams, so 38 people, at least 2 teams I know have cheated. Uh, and even though they made the graphic and whatnot on our socials, I'm well aware that 2 teams cheated, and so I'm a little disappointed because you read all the stories on Reddit and whatnot of like, oh yeah, I hit a charity event and the scramble winners allegedly shot a 53 or whatever. Dude, thankfully no one went that far. No one was that egregious with it, but I can promise you that some of the scores that I saw come across were skeptical. But thankfully, it wasn't a case of they allegedly won, but this is definitely a lie. So I'm going to throw it out. And then they're going to come berate me and ask me, well, who beat our score? Thankfully, it was no scenario like that, but it was definitely, I don't think you came in fifth here, 16-year-old cousin of mine who was whacking it into the woods every shot someone saw him. So thankfully, that was the only like major issue with cheating. I think the only other cheating was like they wanted to avoid writing 3 digits on their scorecard, so they just chipped off a couple strokes, which I totally understand. But yeah, if that's the only real issue, then that's the only issue. Oh
It
man.
sounded like a fun event, and I mean, hopefully, people enjoyed it. It seemed like, it was really legit, which was probably your biggest, concern about it was hopefully, oh God, you're concerned that people aren't going to take it seriously, but it seemed like it was fun. I mean, just following along and hearing about it from you. I mean, despite your angry text messages about your score, I think it was a successful event, and I'm, bummed I couldn't make it out there. If it was any other weekend, I probably could have, but I mean, it was cool to see, and cool to see get your feet under the ground with that event.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, again, golf I'm not great at, in case this hasn't been made very clear by now. But to do an event like this for a great cause and to have so many people that you care about and trust come out and support something that means to you, it just means something in here. And it was a great opportunity for us, I think, to kind of grow our brand too. Again, not one of the main things, but it was great to like show what we're doing and get people behind us. And so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And next year, again, I've told basically everyone this year when I was like, please don't invite too many randos to this just to crowd the field. The main goal this year was to just establish we can do it and know what's needed for next year. And I think next year we'll build a team up and really hit the ground running. And I'd like to double. We had 38 this year. I'd like to almost double that next year. And I think that's very achievable. Not too
Yeah.
much of a request. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, man, it was electric, and everyone was really getting into it. I think I've surrounded myself with a lot of. Well, you can't really pick your family, but I've surrounded myself with a lot of friends, and then even my family, where everyone's kind of on the same wavelength, and everyone took it seriously, but not enough to where it was like ruining it. And people were like, "Well, what about this? What about that?" Like no one was really confrontational or pissed off about anything in terms of how something went down. So it was fun. It was that very good balance of there was some competition in the air, but no one was so serious they were ruining it. And the putting contest, as I said earlier, people who had never met some of the other people before were like chirping certain people that they hadn't met before. Like we had college friends, my friends from home, cousins, like surrounding the practice green because it was the way the putting competition worked. You started at 3 feet out, then you made that putt, then you backed up another 3 feet. And each time you made a putt, you backed up 3 feet. And so only one person went at a time, and the rest were standing like lined up in a circle around the green. And so then there was kind of like another line of people that had already went. And so everyone's watching one person go. And there was so much hollering, oohing, awing, chirping. Again, just people that didn't know other people, just seeing that their friends were, making fun of them, and then they'd join in. And it was a great atmosphere. And we probably only got through about a dozen people before the rain ruined it, but it was good. It was a really fun, energetic time. And then 50-50, or well, it wasn't a 50-50. The prize raffle went off really well too. That was a lot of fun, a lot of jokes being thrown around there. So it was just a very good vibe. And I really couldn't have asked for much more. It was a great time. And again, we'd raised $1,700 for Make a Wish, which was the main goal of this, obviously. And we're so ready for next year. I would plan one for next month if I had to. That's how amped I am for next year to get this thing going again. Because there's so many new things I want to try. There's things would
Right.
say, all right, that's an easy fix. We can make this a little more seamless for next year too. So I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready. You're going to be there next year too. I'll make sure of it. It'll be my dying, act. We'll make sure you're there. But no, man, it was great. It was so much fun. I'm just saying the same things over and over again, but just to do something of that
I mean, it
magnitude,
illustrates your excitement about it. I
yeah,
mean, you are repeating yourself, but that's just because it was a fun time and it went off well, and you're proud of it, and it was something you put together, and you should be.
yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. But there was one group that was like very questionable. We gave each group 2 mulligans, meaning each player had 2 mulligans to use because I'm like, it's a charity scramble. I can tell you about 10 people on this list that don't golf all that much, but they're doing it. So
Right.
like, I don't want to embarrass anybody. Here, take a couple mulligans. And there were a couple of the people who were a little more on the competitive side that are like, why is there like, and they didn't know I was the host because they were just friends of other people. And they were like, why is there 2 mulligans here? And I was like, we're here to have fun too. It's a charity event, not PGA sanctioned. So that was like the only thing that I heard. And I was like, really? Like you're mad I'm making it a little easier for you. But I mean, it was fun. And again, there's that good balance of a healthy competitiveness. And that was the only real
That's good.
question mark. I think that and closest to the pin kind of got ruined because no one noticed the marker at first. And so I exaggerated how close my one. They had a marker that you put into the green, and then if you hit it closer than where the marker's previous spot was, you moved it to your ball's location and wrote your name. And so theoretically, whoever's name was last on that list, that's who had the closest shot. But no one saw it. So that was kind of a disaster. But we'll work on that next year. We'll work on that next year. I was preparing to speak to everyone before we began, and then the air raid siren went off saying it's go time. So that kind of went up in smoke because everyone zipped past me on golf carts. But I think next year on the flyer we'll write everyone meet outside the clubhouse at 8:45 for a quick little rundown. But again, that's sort of those tiny
Yeah.
fixes that I think we'll get through easy next year. But yeah, great event. Again, sorry you couldn't make it, but grateful for everyone who did. And for the Penguins, JTM Foods, Erie Seawolves, Altoona Curve, Penguins Pirates. I mentioned one of them already. Dave Hallman Chevrolet up in Erie, UPMC, and anyone else. A lot of family friends who didn't make it but donated, sent checks with their relatives or kids or whoever did come and play. My wife, who was making signs for me at 11 o'clock the night before, really making things pop. It was a phenomenal event. And I couldn't have asked for much more. Again, there's those little things I'm like, we got to tweak this a bit for next year. But in terms of it basically being me and then my wife making signs and a few other people saying, I'm going to do this for you, it was basically a 2-person show, and it went off much better than I could have anticipated. So I'm ready to go next year with a full team. So yeah, that's enough talking for me. You've been having some phenomenal rounds down there in Georgia, South Carolina, Delaware, whatever tri-state area you bounce around from in your free time. How's your game been going, man?
It's interesting, and I mean, it's sort of evolved over the last week or so. I mean, I had a round pretty close after our last episode at Black Creek in Elabelle, which is kind of close to where I am, that I shot better than I've shot in a long time. I think I got to pull up the rounds here. But yeah, I was going to add, hopefully next year I can make it out there. My dad was actually really disappointed he couldn't go. He really wanted to.
Your dad's my new favorite Instagram follower on
Oh,
the Stranded page. He has liked everything we've posted since he started following, and due to your schedule, you're not involved in half as much as you were back in our prime in college. But to see your dad still out there shelling out likes for us all the time, it feels
yeah.
good. He also just looks so
He got
happy in his
Instagram.
profile picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he got Instagram about 2 years ago and he's still just figuring out how to use it. But everybody talks about that when I ask them, if they follow him. He's like, oh my God, his Instagram stories are great, or he just likes everything. He'll like stories all the time. But yeah. So he was disappointed we couldn't go out to it, but I'm sure we'll get there next year. So I shot an 89 in Elabelle, which I was shocked after how I started because I had a really bad start, first couple holes, and then I picked it up towards the end. I was golfing with just a dad and his son, and we were just having a good time going out there, not really policing each other, looking for extra balls along the course as you always do. So that was cool. I mean, Black Creek's, I like it a little bit more than the Georgia Southern course just because it's more open. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of like, oh, wow, how did they get a golf course out of this spot in the middle of nowhere, Georgia? But it was cool. I mean, it was a good time. Didn't really lose too many balls that day, so it was fun. And then I had the absolute pleasure of playing with my grandfather a few times up in Beaufort when I went for just the last week. He has a golf course in his neighborhood. He has, and he plays all the time. And the landing at Pleasant Point in Beaufort, it's good. I shot typically how I normally do. I shot 92 the first. I gave myself a 92, but that one was an incomplete round. We got to, and this happened the first time I golfed there, but we got to hole 13 and then the heavens opened. We were like, okay, maybe, because Beaufort's kind of situated in on like an island, and there's so many islands around it on the coast of South Carolina. It's very unique in its landscape. And we were like, well, with how that storm's looking, maybe it'll miss us. Maybe it'll be isolated. Maybe it's going north and we're kind of south. So we got to hole 13 and then we get onto the tee box and then the sky starts to get really dark. And then the cold breeze comes in. We're like, all right, this is when the storm is about to start. And thank God we chose that time to get out of there because we booked it, we left, and it started to pour and the heavens open for the rest of the night. So that was there was people in front of us that were walking. Hopefully they made it out, but they were still teeing off when the storm started. So I shot 64 through 13 holes, which I felt pretty good about. But it's a retroactive 92 for me because that's typically where I sit. And then we golfed again for real on a nicer day. I think the next day or the day after, and I shot a 90 on that one, which was good. I was with my grandpa and a couple of his friends. Typical round, nothing crazy. That course's problem is that the greens are really bad. They're kind of choppy, so it'll slow down. And it was making my grandfather, who's a former scratch golfer, very pissed off about some of his putts. So, and then we got to one of my favorite courses of all time, and I have a story about that course that I can get to in a minute. From when I was younger, but it was Legends of Paris Island, which is home of the, and not many know Paris Island. It's home of the Marines and the Marine Corps. And I believe, I don't want to get anything wrong here, but they're stationed there. That's where my grandpa was stationed back when he was in the Marines and where he's been pretty much ever since. And it's one of the most beautiful courses I've ever played on. That's not a private course. The greens are almost perfectly maintained. Beautiful scenery, and you can just feel the history of all the Marines and stuff going on around there. And I was getting pointers the whole time from my grandpa because it was just me and him, and he was getting angry that I was kind of following his directions, to a T, not he was like, oh, stand behind the ball, and actually stand behind the ball, not stand over and looking at it, because I come from a coaching background. My dad was a head coach in hockey, so I always used to follow directions. And I shot an 85. I had a really good front nine, and that, the back nine just ruined my score because I could have been much better. But I had a couple of pars that I was really happy about. I was hitting greens. It was awesome. And I felt really good out there for the first time ever. And he was actually telling me, how to grip, how to swing, and how to keep my eye on it. And, if not for a poor back nine, I could have had a much better score, but I felt really good. And it was a beautiful day. And, the greens were awesome. They're pretty fast there. So you had to deal with that. And again, you could feel all the history at Paris Island.
Yeah, very weird tidbit, but you kept texting me Paris Island. I'm like, where have I heard that before? And then I put together Billy Joel mentions it in Goodnight Saigon, the song he
Yeah,
wrote about the Vietnam War and the treatment of all the soldiers there. So I was glad I figured that one out because I was like, it might be a weird thing to bring up to Tyler and be like, hey, man, is that like the Paris Island? But
yeah,
I'm glad I made those connections there. But yeah, it's I was getting those pictures you were sending me, and you tell me about the heaters you were going on, and it was really making. I had no time in the past like 2 or 3 weekends to get out and get a practice golf round in, which really annoyed me.
yeah,
Um, and I was living vicariously through you and the beautiful weather, the beautiful courses, and I was glad to see that the rounds kind of came with those wonderful results.
yeah.
Given the fun was, seeming you were having. It's very contagious for a little bit there, even over
Yeah.
text.
So it's the home of the Marine Corps Recruit Depot. So basically where you get stationed and stuff. And yeah, I mean, obviously, you'll shave a few strokes off, just because you're not playing competitively. But I mean, it was pretty close, as close to an 85 as I could have been under normal circumstances. I had a lot of birdie chances that I messed up with just not knowing how the greens ran there. But I'm still searching for that first birdie. It's going to be electric when I get it. But there's nothing like golfing down here, man. I mean, I hate to, I don't want to be like an ass about it or anything, but I mean, it's really like there's some really beautiful courses in this area, because Beaufort's only about an hour, 20-minute drive from where I am in Georgia. So it was awesome. And my fun story about Paris Island, I'm going to make it as short as I can. When I was like, I think 10 or 11 years old, I was out there, with my dad and and my grandpa and a couple other people. When I'm 10 years old, I wasn't really into golf that much. And I was kind of bored and we were on the back nine. And, my dad had said to me, he was like, oh, yeah, just go walk over the next hole and then we'll get to the clubhouse eventually. And I heard that as walk all the way to the clubhouse. So I walked all the way down and sat in the clubhouse and they spent half an hour looking for me because they thought I got
Oh,
like eaten by an
no.
alligator or something. And then the people at the clubhouse came out and saw me and saw everything was okay. So it's a fun story that
That's
my family
awesome.
looks back on fondly. But I was getting flashbacks for that, sitting of all the scenery that I remember from going there that day. I mean, it is a beautiful course. It's on, one of those islands out there. And I don't really know if those islands have a name, but they're very unique
Mhm.
in their landscape. But it was fun. And, I shot an 85. I don't know if I'll ever get close to that again because that was, like one of those days where you felt like everything was going right. And yeah, and hopefully, things start to improve as I get more rounds under my belt.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I did want to, I didn't really talk about any specific holes from the, tournament, but I just want to tell you how, I think every golfer's had that experience where it all clicks briefly and you're like, "Man, why am I getting so worked up about this game all the time? Like I'm in the zone. I can, have a chance to win a legit tournament if I entered like a club tournament or something."
Right.
And then how everything comes crashing down. Second hole we played was
Probably.
a par 3. We took only my shots. I hit I don't remember what I hit actually, out of the tee box. It was like a 180-yard par 3. Hit it just to the right of the green, but it rolled across like the front half of the green and rolled off. So it's like, "Oh man, like we're good." Chip, pretty good chip. One of the like 2 or 3 good chips I had all day because I wasn't totally in my head yet. Uh, leave myself about a 15-ish foot par putt. Buried it. Buried the par putt.
Amazing.
I was on cloud 9. I had absolutely smoked, our approach shot on the first hole, took a 6 iron, whacked it, bounced onto the green, had a little too much heat because the greens were very dry and rolled off, but it was good. I was in a very good space pretty much the entire front 9 until we both missed a 3-foot birdie putt. I will stand by the fact that mine would have gone in, but the flagstick was leaning off to the side and it kicked it out. But I don't want to make too much of a fuss about that. Whatever. If I was playing alone, you're damn right I was giving myself that birdie, but I wasn't going to do it
Oh
then.
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so that was kind of where it went off the rails. But I mean, just a lot of good came from that round. And I know I touched on this pretty extensively earlier, but when 3 of the 4 like main aspects of the game are going so well, but the one that you aren't doing too well on is just absolutely pitiful. It's a shame how much it derails around because I genuinely think that was some of the best golf I've ever played was on Saturday.
Yeah. So
So
it's those par threes that really can, help you out. And I for some reason now just swing my 4-iron so well in par threes. Like I can for some reason get to the greens, and there was a couple holes there. I had one early on. I don't know which hole it was, maybe 3 or 4, where I actually hit the green, on the par three, and was close to a birdie, but got a par. But yeah, it's those ones that really, you know, make you realize, oh, maybe I could do this longer. And then the next hole you double, and then you realize that you were a little bit, you jumped the gun a little bit.
We were having some fun too. If one of us hit a really good shot and knew the other probably wouldn't top it unless something amazing happened, we'd just try like a really stupid kind of different way to play it or whatever. So Jack hit a moonshot off the deck with like a
Yeah.
3 wood or something, like smoked it on this par five. And I'm like, I'm not hitting the ball that far. But I've been working on getting my club speed up a little bit to help with some of that. So I torqued my body, the most I've ever torqued my body, and smoked a golf ball. Like line drive that just curved. Like it had an exponential curve, but it probably was the hardest I've ever hit a golf ball, but it was hysterical because it never left like a line drive state, and it just carried and then just made a very abrupt right turn into the woods. And everyone was like, "What'd you use?" And I said, "A 3-iron." And they said, "You don't need to swing a 3-iron that hard, dude. Like, what are you doing? It's gonna do all the work for you." I'm like, "Well, I'm working on my club speed." And they're like, "No, not now." So that was pretty enjoyable. I'm trying to
Tried your
think of
best
any
to Bryson DeChambeau it there. I saw him swing a ball
yeah.
196 miles an hour in the PGA Championship. I was like, oh my god.
Trying to think of what other shot there was that I just was so enamored with how I hit it. It just felt great, but I literally just thought of it and put it in my mind and said I need to bring that up again, but, it's escaped me for the time being. But we've talked a lot about how one bad hole derails rounds and how that's annoying. And I will tell you, we're gonna save the full announcement for maybe next episode because hopefully by then all of the details will be figured out and we'll have a full field. But we've talked about the SSGA kind of coming back in a way, and we think we found a way to do that using kind of an abbreviated version of a Stableford or Ford. I don't know how you pronounce that actually. I know it's a very popular way to do things over in the UK. I know it's not a super popular method in America, but kind of an abbreviated Stableford scoring where yeah, you get punished for bad holes, but not that extensively, where you get points for doing well as opposed to, strokes. You get points, and the higher point total will get someone a win. We got people in different locations who seem to be interested that we want to loop in. So hopefully we will fill that field out for what we're calling the SSGA Tour. Since we're all in different locations, it's a little more exciting to throw the word tour on there. Uh, and we're going to try to hopefully get this to be a thing this year, a little bit of a abbreviated season this year with 3-ish regular season rounds and then a championship in-person round towards August at some point. But again, we're not going to give you too much just yet. We got to make sure we can fill out that field and make sure it's all going to work. But we're kind of excited about that. And there's always a chance that we get the old scramble format back, at least in a one-off little tournament. But that also you could just consider as the Stranded Sports Open at this point, since that's a
Yeah.
scramble tournament. But yeah, a lot of exciting things in the work. This has all been Tyler's brainchild so far. We've both thrown ideas back, but he's the one who said we should really do this. Like us being in different states 9 hours apart doesn't mean we can't kind of compete against each other and come up with a fun way. So again, without revealing too much, anything you want to say about kind of what we've been trying to work on here?
Yeah, I mean, because it was sort of just because I was watching, the PGA Championship, and I was like, oh, I find it so cool that they can just like pick up random days and go out and play against all each other. But I was like, and I know you've been wanting to get down here at some point, but I was also like, oh, well, I know a lot of other people want to like hang out and stuff, and I'm like, I know a lot of us play golf, and I was just thinking about it, like we could maybe, do something kind of fantasy golf wise, because we all like playing fantasy, and just with a way of not having us interacting in person, but still playing and having our rounds mean a little more because I go a lot out by myself. And I don't have anybody to play with. So, having these rounds actually mean something. Obviously there's no way to police certain things, but I figured, why don't we just make a fun thing out of it? Because I know you want to play, I know I want to play, and I'm sure we can get other people, involved, and then have the championship culminate in some weekend later this year at some cool place in some neutral location where we don't
Mhm.
know the green or the path going into it would be awesome. And, I threw on your plate and I saw the spark sort of fly after that. So I'm excited for it, man. I think it's going to be fun. If we can get people interested and actually committed to it, I think it'll just ascend.
Yeah, yeah, I do too. We're the only 2 commits right now. We have a strong third, very much pretty much a yes, but gotta do a little more selling. Then we have our target. It's like when Liv was buying all of the PGA players. We know who we want. Now we just gotta get them to put the ink on the paper. But yeah, we do have a website. I'll link that in the description below. It's SSGA Tour. It's built on Weebly, and I'm not paying for a custom domain for this yet until maybe I know we have the interest. But yeah, so it's a Weebly website, but they're partnered with like Square, the like swiping on your phone credit
Yeah.
card thingy online store, whatever. So it's like .square.weebly.com. I don't remember, but it'll be linked below if you want to read about some of the rules, and then just look at pictures of me and Tyler on the roster page because we're the only 2 confirmed so far. But yeah,
I need to get a picture of me playing golf soon because I don't play
yes,
with
you do.
anybody down here.
Well, the
So I may.
suited like profile photo is not too bad either.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like a PGA profile photo, but I might get maybe if when I go home in a few weeks, get my dad to take one of me swinging or my buddy back home. But yeah, if any of our pals listen to this, and you kind of seem interested in it, ask us about it because we want to get more people
It's
involved.
literally just you give us the scorecard from your round, and then
Yeah,
or you keep track of the point system yourself. And so it's literally if you play golf, you can just send us the scorecard or use our new point format to give yourself the points based on your scorecard, and then we will make the standings from that. It's not too intense. Again, we'd like people that would have fun with it rather than just like, here's my score and that's it. But we just want to fill the field, so we'll take pretty much anybody. That's not a desperation plea. That's just the state of where it's at.
yeah, but you got to be committed to it. That's the one thing. You got to make sure you can play those 3 rounds or however long we have, and then can commit to a potential trip somewhere.
Mhm.
We're looking at like Carolinas or something like that, but commit to a potential trip somewhere that we can all
Lower
go.
Virginia, the
Lower
Carolinas.
Virginia, the greater DMV area.
So
Um,
we'll see. Or is it all a fever dream? We'll see. But anyway, appreciate everyone for tuning in. Appreciate everyone who helped at all with the Stranded Sports Open. Biggest thing we've ever done. Believe it or not, no one was like, "What the hell is Stranded Sports?" I think either people didn't care or they knew, thankfully. But I think next year we might change the name and just do Stranded Sports presents the blah 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 Open, just to make it a little more marketing
the
friendly.
Nick Hederick Open.
Yeah, I was like looking at names and there's nothing you can do, and this isn't a knock in any way on like the name Make a Wish, but like every idea I was seeing was like swing for the kids, which sounds like you're swinging and aiming for children, or like the Make a Wish come true golf outing. I'm like, no, like these are a little corny. So we'll see what we can come up with. But I think next year we're gonna switch up the name a little bit. If we can think of a like charity tournament name that's not painfully corny. But we have almost a year to think on it. So hopefully that
That's right.
comes to fruition. But thanks for tuning in. We do really appreciate it. And we will see you probably in a few weeks or sooner if we can fill out the 2 to 4 other spots we have open here for the golf league. But I'm Nick. That's Tyler. We'll see you next time.